Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Infinity Pool, the brand new Brandon Cronenberg movie starring Mia Goth and Alexander Skarsgård, and this is actually going to be the beginning of my Sundance 2023 series, even though technically I'm watching this outside of Sundance because it wasn't available online, but I have so many different Sundance films, and this is technically premiering at Sundance, but Sundance is still going on and it's now releasing in theaters, so this will be the only spoiler review of all these Sundance reviews that I will do over the course of the next week, but I will have so many reviews out, so if you guys subscribe to the channel, you can see all my early reviews for all these different films, like Sometimes I Think About Dying, like Magazine Dream starring Jonathan Majors, and just a whole bunch of other films that I'm very excited to watch. So like I said, spoilers for Infinity Pool. Let's just jump right into this thing, starting off with Brandon Cronenberg, who is one of the most fascinating directors working today, because if you saw his last film, Possessor, especially the uncut version of that film, you know that he is just insane with his films. And I never saw Possessor in theaters, but I saw Infinity Pool now in theaters, and it's such a wild experience because you're going to see things in his films that you will never see in any other films, because he is insane with all the just crazy sci-fi concepts that he comes up with, all the blood, the gore, the sex, the drugs, the psychedelic editing, especially with this film, which I think the editing is brilliant in all of his films, but especially with this one, it is just stuff that you won't see in any other films, and I think this is probably one of the most original films I've seen in quite some time, next to Divinity, which is another Sundance film that I just watched, and it was a double feature. I watched Divinity, then I watched Infinity Pool, which is, if you have been buying tickets for Sundance and you watch both of those movies, you know that is just some insane double feature. And when Divinity comes out, I dare you guys to watch both those movies back to back. Maybe throw in Suspiria from the 2018 or 2017 Suspiria, or maybe do Possessor along with it, make it like a 3-film watch along. It is just insane. These films are absolutely bonkers. That's the category of film that I think this one is in a group with. So what is the crazy sci-fi concept of this film? Well, essentially you have James and Em who are on vacation at this very luxurious resort, and they run into Mia Goth's character and her husband, and they essentially hit it off. You know, Mia Goth's character is a fan of James's book that he wrote. He wrote this book that nobody really read, so he's kind of surprised that Mia Goth has this connection with him. So they hit it off. They decide to go out to explore this country, and essentially what happens is Skarsgård is drunk off his mind. They go partying. They're driving back to the hotel, and out of nowhere, a guy's in the middle of the road, and Skarsgård absolutely runs him over and kills him instantly. They try to get away with it. They try to go to the hotel, try to avoid the police, but they're caught. They're all thrown in jail, and Skarsgård is pinned for the murder of this guy. So again, what is the sci-fi concept? Well, essentially, in this country, you can decide to clone yourself. So the person that is wrong in this situation, which, you know, you have this guy, he had a couple kids. This kid, if he wants to kill Skarsgård's character, you can clone yourself, and you just have to watch yourself be murdered by the person that you have wronged, essentially, which is just a really bizarre concept, and it's very disturbing the first time that you see this. Of course, Skarsgård has some weird interest to this because he's looking to be inspired as a writer, and now he's put in a situation that is completely out of this world, and he's watching this kid murder himself. It's an out-of-body experience. It's completely transfixing for this character, and he becomes so interested in this new world that he has discovered, whereas his girlfriend or wife, I'm not exactly sure what it was, but she is absolutely mortified by it. She wants to leave immediately, and there's a whole thing with Skarsgård and his passport, and he can't find it, so he's stuck here now with Mia Goth's character, with this entire collection of people who have all gone through the exact same experience. And that's where you can loop in the title of this film, Infinity Pool. This movie is essentially just a constant cycle of violence, of drugs, of all these terrible things that these characters are going through, because they essentially have no consequences. They can go run a guy over, kill him, and essentially just get your clone killed for it, so they can right that wrong just like that, and now they're back to the hotel as if nothing has ever happened. They're completely scot-free. They have no consequences. And so this group of characters, you know, kind of led by Mia Goth and her husband, is just, they're insane. There's a psychedelic drug scene that is just absolutely insane. If you think it's insane at the start of that scene, just wait like 5 minutes, because it's a very long psychedelic, just really trippy, great editing, just bizarre thing, and it just gets more bizarre and more bizarre, more nudity, more orgies, more just everything in this one sequence that is just, it's insane. And I think the first third of this movie, that whole thing where you're kind of introducing the characters, and you're introduced to Skarsgård, introduced to Mia Goth, and they're going off on this picnic thing, it just feels very normal. It feels very tame for a Brandon Cronenberg movie. And I was like, you know what? I just watched this Divinity movie. That was absolutely insane. This movie cannot be anywhere near as weird as that film. and then it makes a turn. You're introduced to this sci-fi concept, and then you meet these characters, and you meet all these just really psychedelic, very trippy editing styles of this film, and it just goes off the rails, and it is so transfixing. You are glued to the screen, especially if you're into this type of movie. I can easily see somebody being turned off immediately when you get to that scene where he's essentially watching himself be murdered by this kid, because it is very bloody, it is very intense, and it's just very it's a lot. All of Brandon Cronenberg's 2 movies, both Possessor and now this, it is a lot to handle. So if the way that I'm describing this, or if you saw the trailer, if this is not for you, you're going to hate this movie. You're going to think it's so weird and bizarre, but there's something about his films that is just interesting to me. I like weird movies. I like movies that really take big swings, and this movie does. And I think that cycle of violence and that theme of, these characters being able to get away with anything, they are rich, they are powerful, they can do whatever they want. I think that is kind of the running theme of this movie that is something to say about the world that I think this film really does capture. I think Brandon Cronenberg does a great job at kind of weaving this story. I don't think the story and its themes are as clever as I think, the themes and all the way that he weaves things together in Possessor. I don't think it's as clever. I think the movie at one scene in particular is pretty pretentious, which I'll get into in just a second here, but overall, I just thought he does a great job at introducing these ideas and themes and this sci-fi concept and just weaving together just a really weird and bizarre and just very entertaining movie that is both horrific and quite funny at times. And of course, you have the one and the only Mia Goth, who was snubbed from the Oscars for Pearl, even though there was zero chance in hell she was ever being nominated for that, which is such a shame. I saw one tweet that was saying, oh, look at this article of all the horror films that were nominated for the Oscars this year, and it was just a blank article. I thought that was pretty funny, but Mia Goth in both, X and Pearl is brilliant, but in this film, she just knows how to choose the most wild roles. And yes, I did watch her role in A Cure for Wellness, which is also just a very great role. If you love Mia Goth in both X and Pearl and now this, go back and watch some of her other filmography, like A Cure for Wellness. That's a very weird movie that it has its own cult following. And also at Sundance, I think 2 years ago, I think my first year watching the Sundance Film Festival, she was in a movie called Mayday, which I actually really love that movie as well. So she is one of these actresses that just always chooses just the most interesting roles, and she can definitely lead a film. And she's kind of a little subtle at first for the first half of this movie, and then she just goes off the rails. And again, the way that she performs these roles, and when she goes off the rails and she's screaming just at the top of her lungs, or she's doing these very goofy voices, or at the end of the movie when they pull over the bus and she's just yelling for James to get out of the bus, it is just so entertaining to watch her on screen just doing all these crazy things. And her character is also very interesting because at the beginning of the movie, she is a super fan of this book that's, nobody has ever read, essentially, but, he essentially found a super fan of his that he didn't think he would be able to find, and it turns out that was all a ruse, because this couple kind of lures in other couples at this hotel, gets them in trouble, makes them go through this whole experience of having themselves watch themselves be killed at this police station, and this was all a ruse for them to get this new person as a part of their kind of like this group, this weird cultish group that they have, where they just kind of go nuts and they murder people, essentially. So it was all a ruse, and when she just kind of unveils all of that at the end of the movie, when she's riding on the hood of the car, it is just, her performance is magnetic. She is always magnetic in all of her films, and I love Mia Goth so much. She was great in this film. But if I were to point out any negatives for this film, I will say that same scene that I just praised of Mia Goth on the hood of the car, she brings up a review for the book that Skarsgård in the movie wrote, and it's essentially saying that it's pretentious, and that there's some weird things about it, and that the only reason why he was able to publish this book in the first place was because of his very rich stepfather, essentially. And I think it kind of points a little bit more towards, him in real life, of him being the director of Possessor, and the criticisms that film had, and saying that he is essentially a nepo baby because he is a son of David Cronenberg, and that he doesn't have anything of his own to offer the world. And I think it reached a little bit of it felt too real, it felt too close to himself. Maybe I'm reading too far into it, but I felt like it was just a little bit too on the nose in that one scene, and the ending did kind of lose me as soon as, he figured out what was going on, and they had him essentially beat up and piss on himself towards the end of the film, and he freaks out and he just wants to leave out of there. You find out that he actually hid the passport himself because he was so enraptured by this thing, this world that he has discovered, that he was the one who hid his own passport, making himself stranded here, having his wife go off alone without him going home. And so he's essentially put himself in this situation. Now he wants to get out, and once he wants to get out, all this stuff happens towards the end of the movie, and it started to lose me a little bit, and the ending is just a little bit bizarre of him and Mia Goth laying on that grass, doing whatever in the world they were doing there. I'm not exactly sure what the movie's trying to say with the very ending of this film, especially with him staying at the hotel after everybody leaves, essentially pretending that their lives are going back to normal after all the crazy things that they've done. But Skarsgård just can't move past that. He can't go back to the real world. He can't pretend that none of this has ever happened. He's just so scarred from everything that he just sits in the rain at this hotel once it's all closed out. And I'm curious to watch the film again to try to piece apart exactly what that means in terms of the themes of this movie. So it's definitely a film that I want to revisit, even as crazy and as disturbing as some of the things that you see on screen. It is a film that I do want to revisit soon. And of course, as always, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on Infinity Pool. If you watch the film and you have your ideas of exactly what you think the ending means, I'm very curious because I didn't read anything about it. Like I said, this technically wasn't part of my Sundance film, so I didn't get to see the little Q&A after the movie. I'm very actually curious to watch some interviews with Brandon Cronenberg, with Mia Goth, with Alexander Skarsgård, with all these people that were involved in the making of this film, because I want to piece this thing together. I want to put in the effort to try to learn exactly what Infinity Pool is trying to say entirely by the end of the film. So comment down below your thoughts of what you think the ending means. I'm very curious to hear all you guys' thoughts. And if you want to continue watching my reviews for the Sundance Film Festival, like I said, this is the first one out of the gates. I'm definitely going to do some individual reviews, especially for Sometimes I Think About Dying. That film was brilliant. It has Daisy Ridley in it. I'm very excited to talk about that film in its own individual review, but I might clump in some other reviews just kind of together in kind of a longer form, because I can't do like 17 reviews in a week. That's very exhausting. So definitely subscribe to the channel to see all my coverage of the Sundance Film Festival, and subscribe to also see all the other videos that I'll have on the channel for the rest of the year. So thanks everybody for watching. Like I said, comment down below, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I hope to see you all in my next one.